Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack the Powell tragedy, a case that really just shook the nation. And not just because of the unimaginable horror of what actually happened, but because it exposed these massive, catastrophic flaws in the child welfare system. Today, we're going to look at how a whole series of systemic failures, missed warnings, and honestly, bureaucratic oversights all piled up into a completely preventable disaster. We need to dissect the facts, follow the paper trail, and understand exactly how a system literally identical to the ones entrusted to protect vulnerable kids in our own communities, completely broke down.
So we're starting right in the middle of a literal nightmare. It's February 5th, 2012. Elizabeth Griffin Hall, a frantic social worker, is calling 911 from outside a rental home in Puyallup, Washington. Now, she was contracted by the state to provide supervised visitation between a father and his kids. But as you can see from her exact words to dispatch, things went terribly, terribly wrong the second they got there. The boys ran ahead, and the father just pulled them inside and slammed the door shut. He locked her out. So she's just left standing there on the porch, totally separated from the children she was legally mandated to protect.
Trapped inside that home with a man named Josh Powell are his two young sons. You've got Braden, who's just 5, and Charlie, who's 7. And as this 911 call goes on, the social worker's panic just goes through the roof. She tells them she smells gasoline, she's sitting in her Prius in the driveway, and she tells the dispatcher how she's been banging on the doors and windows, but nothing's working. I mean, the sheer terror of those minutes, it's unimaginable. You have these two vulnerable boys locked in a house with a guy who deliberately isolated them from their state-appointed guardian. And the gravity of the situation completely amplifies when you realize who exactly was inside that house. On the call, the social worker is desperately trying to convey the urgency, pointing out that this father, he's the husband of missing Susan Powell. You probably know this was a massive, high-profile case. Josh Powell was the primary person of interest in his wife's disappearance in Utah years earlier. So this high-stakes 911 call is really the horrific climax of a complete systemic failure. It forces us to ask, how on earth did the system allow these boys to be delivered straight to the home of a primary murder suspect for a visit?
Part 1. Susan's Secret Paper Trail.
To really understand how we got to that driveway, we have to rewind the clock. The warnings actually began years before that 911 call because Susan was terrified. If we look back to June 2008, after a really intense argument over faith and finances, Susan actually had a neighbor record a deposition of the fight in shorthand. Then, the very next day at work, she handwrote a secret will on college-ruled paper. By August, she's hiding these documents in a safe deposit box, methodically creating this hidden paper trail to document her escalating marital stress. And then, on December 7th, 2009, Susan just vanished. Under highly suspicious circumstances, of course. While Josh claimed he randomly took their toddlers on a midnight camping trip in the middle of a blizzard, her secret will contained this absolutely chilling directive. She wrote, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. Take care of my boys." She even wrote on the outside of the envelope that she did not trust her husband. And look, following her disappearance, police actually found Susan's blood on a floor right next to a recently cleaned sofa with fans literally set up to dry it. Add to that, Josh immediately moved to withdraw all her retirement funds. But despite all of this glaring circumstantial evidence, Josh was never arrested. He was never officially charged for her disappearance. Part 2. Red flags and missed warnings. Now, the sheer volume of red flags ignored by authorities here is honestly staggering. Let's look at what they knew. Back in 2011, authorities raided the home of Josh's father, Susan Powell, and uncovered a literal house of horrors, just filled with disturbing, sexually explicit materials and voyeuristic videos. At that point, the boys were placed in protective custody with their grandparents. But soon after, DSHS learns that over 400 incestuous images were found on Josh's own computer. Then you have deeply concerning statements and drawings from the kids themselves. Little Braden actually drew a picture of his mom in the trunk of a car. And to top it all off, just days before the fatal visit, the boy's grandfather explicitly warned a DSHS social worker that Josh was backed into a corner and he was terrified for the boy's safety. The agency had all of these clues right in front of them and just failed to connect the dots. So here we have a stark contrast, really a glaring juxtaposition between what DSHS was legally mandated to do and what they actually did. DSHS had a strict, non-negotiable legal duty to protect these dependent children. I mean, these are the exact institutions we rely on to be our safety nets, right? Yet despite the escalating evidence of Josh's psychological instability and the extremely clear danger he posed, DSHS social workers, along with the guardian ad litem, inexplicably authorized moving the supervised visits from a secure facility directly to Josh's rental home. Doing this directly violated their own internal safety policies at the time, which straight up did not permit supervised visits in a non-custodial parent's home.
Part 3. The fatal supervised visit. All of this brings us right back to the nightmare on February 5th. While the social worker was frantically banging on that front door, Josh Powell had already triple-locked it from the inside. According to the forensic timeline, Josh then turned to his sons and told them, "Lay face down, I have a surprise for you." He then proceeded to brutally attack 5-year-old Braden and 7-year-old Charlie with a hatchet, inflicting severe trauma to their heads and necks, before pouring gasoline all over them and igniting the house.
During the subsequent trial, forensic pathologists confirmed something just unimaginable. The medical evidence showed that the boys' reticular activating systems, which is the part of the brainstem that transmits physical pain and controls consciousness, were completely intact. On top of that, they found alcohol in the boys' systems, which is a byproduct of inhaling breaking down gasoline, meaning they were alive and breathing during the fire. Tragically, this means Charlie and Braden suffered through several minutes of conscious, agonizing physical and emotional pain before they finally died from fatal carbon monoxide poisoning.
Part 4. Accountability and legal fallout.
In the aftermath of this entirely preventable tragedy, the boys' grandparents launched a massive civil lawsuit against DSHS. In court, the agency tried to shield themselves using a legal doctrine known as superseding cause. Basically, they argued that they shouldn't be held liable because a dependency court judge had issued an order just days prior saying visitation should remain as it currently is. DSHS was essentially pointing the finger, claiming this court order was a superseding event that tied their hands, and that it was the judge who legally forced the visitations to continue at Josh's home. While the details of the law really matter here, and the Court of Appeals thoroughly dismantled that defense, they pointed out that Washington is a written order state. So when you look at the actual written orders from the judge, they only dictated the frequency and duration of the visits, twice a week for 3 hours. The written orders never dictated the location. The court made it very clear, DSHS retained total unilateral discretion over where those visits took place. DSHS chose the deadly location, not the judge.
Holding the agency accountable for failing to protect Charlie and Braden, a jury ended up handing down a monumental judgment. They initially awarded $115 million. After segregating damages for Josh Powell's intentional criminal acts, it resulted in a staggering judgment of over $98.5 million against the state of Washington. I mean, it was a massive, unprecedented financial acknowledgement of the state's gross negligence.
But I want to leave you with this final thought as you wrap up this explainer. We've gone through the secret paper trails, the completely ignored warnings, and the devastating forensic reality. Can a monetary settlement, even one nearing $100 million, ever truly fix a broken system? When an agency holds literally all the clues, but still completely fails to protect the most vulnerable kids in its care, does a massive financial penalty actually ensure true justice and reform? Or is it simply a really expensive receipt for a tragedy? Think about that, and keep asking questions.